Hello everyone, welcome to today's session. I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes to let everyone join and settle in, and then we can get started at about 2 or 3 minutes past 11. While we're waiting for everyone to join, we have got a poll in the chat about your experience with Fabric databases. You might have to scroll up a little bit, but there's a Poly plugin that you can submit your response about where you are with Fabric databases, whether you're already using them, whether you're thinking about using them, whether you have no plans of using them, and yeah, where you are. So if you could fill that little question in, that would be very much appreciated. And then when we've got a few more people on, then we'll get started. Looks like at the moment we've got a mixture of people who are already using them or thinking about using them in the future. Okay, we're at 2 minutes past. We've got quite a few people on with us, so I think we can get started. Feel free to keep filling in the poll if you're still finding it while I'm chatting away. So welcome everyone to our live session. Thank you for taking the time to join us today to learn more about Microsoft Fabric databases. Before we jump in, let me introduce you to our speakers. So I'm Gemma, I'm the marketing manager here at Coeo, and I'm going to be facilitating today's session. Presenting today's session is Rob Carroll, who's a principal consultant here with us at Coeo, and he's been working with SQL Server for over 20 years. Rob originally presented this session at FabCon in Vegas and has updated it to align with the November Fabric releases. We do have quite a lot of interesting content to cover today, but we will have time for some questions and a bit of a question and answer session. Rob and I will be monitoring the Q&A window as we go through. I'll just highlight that for you all now. So I'm just going to pop a little message in there and that should pop up for you. So at any point throughout the session, if you have any questions or anything that you would like us to discuss, feel free to pop your question in there and we'll get to it as we go. And with that, I think we're all set to hand over to Rob to get started.
Yeah, thanks, Gemma. Good morning, everyone. So why am I doing this webinar? So this goes back probably to the start of last year where I was at a conference, SQL Bits, where there was lots and lots of talk about Fabric happening, and there was lots of buzz and excitement around Fabric, and I wanted to go and learn a bit more about it myself. And then at that time, Microsoft had also launched a SQL database in Fabric, which was a private preview at that point. So it was a chance, for me as a kind of with a DBA SQL Server type background to get more involved in Fabric and learn more about Fabric and databases in Fabric. So that's where the idea for the session came around. It was to find out more, to learn more myself, and also to learn more about Fabric in general. So Jem has already introduced me. So I'm Rob Carroll. I'm a principal data platform consultant, and I have been working with SQL Server and Microsoft Data Platform for some time, 20 plus years, and I've been with Coeo since 2021. Coeo are a Microsoft Fabric featured partner, and we're also a Microsoft Fabric Databases feature partner, which means that we get access to resources and training materials and things, and it means we've also proven deployments and production environments for our clients. So there's not very many of us worldwide. I think there's only about 20 odds that specialise in databases, but that number is growing as the platform grows. So a little bit about Koyo. So we specialise in the Microsoft data platform and Azure technologies. So we focus on data platform, analytics, AI, and Power BI visualization. And underpinning all that, we have a managed services team that looks after our clients' environments. So yeah, if you want to learn more about what we do, then the link to our website will be sent out after the session with the slides. So this is what we're going to cover today. So just looking at the poll, we've got people thinking about using them. So I'm guessing that you might have had a look at databases in Fabric already. So I'm going to introduce you to it, some of the concepts, and then more from a DBA point of view, what a DBA can bring to Fabric. How you can transition your skills and that good stuff that you've learned over the years, indexing, performance tuning, that sort of stuff, and translate it into Fabric databases. And we'll look at how it compares to other offerings in Fabric, like mirroring, and just do a comparison, how it stacks up. Okay, so if you look at SQL Server in the cloud, so my kind of journey personally has followed this path as well over the years. So when I started looking at SQL Server in the cloud, it was Azure VMs, and that's infrastructure as a service, where you manage the machines and you patch it, you back it up, all that stuff. The next evolution is platform as a service, where Microsoft manage the platform for you, and there's two flavors of that. We've got SQL Managed Instance and Azure SQL Database, and they each have their kind of pros and cons, but essentially Microsoft are managing that underlying platform for you. And finally, with SQL Database and Fabric, we have a fully software as a service SQL database offering. Now, I'm going to focus on SQL database today primarily, but there's also Cosmos DB that is also part of Fabric databases. And there's also Postgres coming along as well. These are the different flavors of SQL of databases in Fabric, but I'll focus primarily on the SQL database option there. But yeah, that hopefully will expand over time to include more database and more open source databases as time goes on. So the architecture of Azure SQL Database and Fabric, that this slide shows you that Azure SQL Database is using storage in Azure. Data and log files are stored as LDF and MDF files, and backup files are stored in that storage. And we have multiple copies of the data. And Fabric on the right-hand side is built on OneLake, which is a storage layer, which is Microsoft describe it as OneDrive for the enterprise, and various other components are built on top of that, like data warehouse, lakehouses, Power BI, and the SQL Analytics endpoint. So what Microsoft are doing with databases in Fabric is that they're bringing the best of these together and building a Fabric platform that supports SQL database. So SQL database was the first one. I mentioned that there's other offerings as well, but Microsoft already had millions of customers running Azure SQL database, so they wanted to bring that good stuff from SQL into Fabric and also get the benefits of running on Fabric, which I'll show you in a moment. So the unified architecture here is that we're using so the databases are still using that traditional SQL format, but Microsoft Fleet Manager is managing the serverless compute, so the databases can scale up and down based on demand. So if you don't use the database, if you create it, you don't use it, you won't be charged anything. However, if you're using it quite heavily, then that database will scale up, and the amount of vCores or memory will scale up, and you'll be billed accordingly. So, but it's still built on that traditional SQL format, and we have data from the SQL databases is mirrored in near real time to Delta tables in OneLake. So Delta tables are the Delta Parquet format, and that's how the data is stored in a lake house, and that's an open source proprietary format that was developed by Databricks, but it's all built on Spark runtime as well. So so that's all mirrored into OneLake in near real time, and then that makes that data accessible via the SQL Analytics endpoint. So that is a read-only endpoint, which allows you to access those Delta tables in OneLake. But it also means that you can create shortcuts, between Delta tables in OneLake and other components in Fabric like Warehouse, and you can use Power BI as well via the SQL Analytics endpoint. So this brings together, your analytical workloads and your transactional workloads. So, a big point of contention for DBAs is reporting workloads running against your production transactional databases, and that can cause issues with different different workloads accessing the same compute resources. So having those tables mirrored into OneLake means that all your analytics queries can run against that mirrored copy of the data, and your transactional applications can still read and write to the database separately, and that data then gets mirrored down to the Delta tables. So just a little bit more about the replication to OneLake. So this unifies the operational and analytics queries, and those Delta tables are built on open source technologies, and you can create shortcuts and use a SQL Analytics endpoint to query the data without actually physically copying it yourself. So you have that separate copy of the data in Fabric that you can query. So when you create a database, you also get this SQL Analytics endpoint, which is how you access those replicated Delta tables, that are copied from the Fabric SQL database. So this brings together the best of the transactional and the analytical features of SQL Server and Fabric, and you can combine the data between the databases with lakehouses and warehouses as well, using shortcuts. And when you query the data, you get the option of the SQL database endpoint, which is read-write, and the SQL Analytics endpoint, which allows you to query the data using T-SQL, but those queries are read-only, because those queries are redirected to your replicated Delta tables in Fabric. So to enable Fabric database, you enable it at the tenant level. So these slides are a little bit out of date, because one of the major announcements this week was that databases in Fabric have now gone GA, so they're no longer in preview. So you probably don't even need to enable this now. It'll just be enabled by default in your tenant. But if it isn't, check that setting there. And yeah, you can also yeah, so you can also enable, you can also apply this to specific security groups. So if you don't want everyone in your environment creating Fabric SQL databases, then you can, you know, constrain that to certain security groups. So to create a Fabric database, sorry, this demo is going to show you how to create a Fabric database and also the Fabric UI. It's really simple to do this. So I've got a video here. Hopefully you can all see that. So basically you create new SQL database and then click on the create button, and that is it. It's as simple as that. So there's no there's not a lot of configuration options you need to configure. You pretty much create the database and it's there for you. It's done. Now, when we take this video, takes a look at the UI. So there are some options that you can actually configure. So we'll have a look at these just now. So if you look at the database in Fabric, you go into the more options, then you can see some of the settings there. Now there's some new stuff there as well around about auditing now that's available, but yeah, essentially there's not much there to configure. You can look at your backups. So because it's a fully software as a service platform, the backups are managed by Microsoft, but you can go in and you can choose a restore point to restore your database. You can also manage permissions here as well. But there isn't much to configure here. Now, that will change in the future, but just now it's pretty much that's the options you have. Now we can go in and look at some of the tables in your database here, and you get this table view, and then you can run select statements there, against the data, and this is all in T-SQL that you're familiar with. We could also see views and stored procedures in there. And if you want to pull data in, you can use a data flow, or you can use a pipeline in Fabric to import data as well. And there's some templates for creating views and tables and stored procedures there, which you can also run. Now, this is quite nice. You can download the connection string here for Visual Studio Code or for Management Studio, and that enables you to actually connect to the database using tools that you're more familiar with, on your desktop. Now, there's also a replication tab there, which shows you the data that's been replicated in near real time into the Delta tables in OneLake. And you can also manage the SQL Server security there, and you can create custom roles, or you can use the built-in SQL database roles as well. So that's a quick tour of the UI. We can also look at how you would connect to the database in Management Studio. So that's the connection information there that you would use to connect to in Management Studio. With DBAs, we're more comfortable working in that tool. It gives us access to things like query store, and more options around about security and development. So you can open that database in Management Studio, and it just appears like a regular Azure SQL database. And we can see the users there that have got access, and we have access to the query store as well, which we'll have a look at in a little bit. So when it comes to source control, then these databases are all fully integrated with Git, so GitHub and Azure DevOps, and you can check in your source code from Fabric, and then you can have multiple people working on these databases at the same time. You could also connect using VS Code, and get access to the repos that way. And we have the SQL package command line tool as well, which can create the SQL project files for you. for DevOps. So let's look at favorite topic, cost. So Fabric uses an all-up capacity model. So compute and storage are separate, and the billing for those are separate. So a capacity is a shared pool of resources, which you then share with warehouses, lakehouses, Power BI reports, pipelines, notebooks, everything in Fabric is all billed against your Fabric capacity. So the costs can be managed by pausing capacities, and you can purchase either pay-as-you-go or you can apply Azure reservations on your capacities, which gives you cost savings. Storage is all your storage is stored in OneLake, but it's tied to capacity, but you still get billed for your storage even when that capacity is paused. And that is purchased as pay-as-you-go. There is no reservations for storage. So the compute and storage are separate, and they're billed slightly separately, but it all comes out of your capacity ultimately. So that's a bit of an overview on SQL databases and Fabric. Now, this brings us to probably what you're more interested in. As a DBA, as someone who's done SQL work in the past, what can you bring? What skills and knowledge can you bring? So you've probably seen from the previous slides that there isn't much to do to set up a Fabric SQL database. There's not that many configuration options you need to tweak. But ultimately it's still a database. It's still your organization's data. So you have certain priorities as a DBA. So in my opinion, security, availability, and performance are some of those key things that you need to do as a DBA. So Fabric brings these autonomous capabilities. So these things are pretty much managed for you to a certain extent. So you don't need to worry about making the right choices when it comes to high availability and disaster recovery. These are complex things. Microsoft takes care of that, in the software as a service platform. So SQL database and Fabric, enables you to get the best security, availability, and performance based on that. So it's secure by default. High availability, disaster recovery is managed for you, and the databases auto scale, and that there's some degree of auto optimization when it comes to index recommendations, that it makes on the database tables. So let's look at security. So the key thing with SQL database and Fabric is there is no SQL authentication. There is no SQL logins and passwords. Everything is done through central identity management and Entra ID. So that might be a good thing. It might be a bad thing. If you're used to using SQL passwords, then you need to switch to using Entra authentication. And the workspace roles and permissions are managed at that workspace level as well. So you can give people access to workspace, or you can give people access to individual databases, using the SQL native features, like create login and grant, revoke, deny permissions. And when it comes to network security, so we can use private link, and all the data is encrypted in transit. That should be TLS 1.2 and 1.3 now. So it's using the latest encryption methods. And when it comes to things like transparent data encryption, so all the data is encrypted at rest. And as of yesterday, customer managed key keys are also supported as well in preview for SQL database and Fabric. and we also have auditing available in preview as well. So the SQL audit that you're used to on in your IaaS or on-prem SQL servers is now available in Fabric SQL database. And we also have central governance, so we can use Microsoft Purview sensitivity labels in Fabric, and you can essentially manage those protection policies using tools like Purview as well. So that's all built into Fabric and can apply to SQL database and Fabric as well. So when it comes to securing, so I won't spend too much time on this, but there's a combination of workspace level roles here that you can see on the left-hand side. So depending on what role you have at the workspace level can determine what roles that you have in the Fabric SQL databases. So there's two planes for securing the data, so at the workspace level, and also we can use the SQL Server access controls as well. So we can add people to roles. We can create new custom roles, and we can give that role permissions in the database as well. So it's a kind of layered approach. We can grant either at the workspace level in Fabric or at the database level as well, using grant, revoke, and deny, and SQL roles as well. Okay, and some of the autonomous management features that we've got in SQL database and Fabric. So we've got the auto HA high availability that's built in. We can auto scale compute and storage for the the databases. The data is automatically replicated to OneLake, so there's no ETL pipelines required. There's automatic backups and point-in-time restore available. Retention period has now been changed from 7 days to 31 days for backups as well. So that's something that was changed quite recently. Everything's patched automatically for you. There's no more patching your databases, and because it's Azure SQL under the hood, then it's using the latest version of SQL Server. So you get all the latest intelligent query processing features, available in in SQL Server, and there is auto indexing available. So that might make you a bit nervous as a DBA, but Fabric will or SQL Server will look at your queries that are running against the database and build indexes that will actually help those queries. Now, those indexes can also be removed again if they're not required. You can also physically create your own indexes, and the user created indexes will always be persisted. They wouldn't be dropped or automatically. So there's this auto indexing feature which I'll show you in a moment. You can see if auto indexing has been taking effect and building indexes on your databases.
Before we move on, Rob, we have got a question in the Q&A.
Sure. Okay. I can't see that question, sorry. Can you?
That's all right. So it's
out?
from Mark. It's from Mark Broadbent, and he's asked for the mirrored database into OneLake that analytical endpoints can consume. Does the Delta Lake replica have automatic optimizations regularly run against it so that consumers can get performant read access?
Yeah, I know it definitely uses v-ordering. Now, there should be, because you don't actually get access to those Delta tables directly. So these are managed by Microsoft. So let me check in the vacuum and optimize, but v-ordering is definitely in use, but I'm 95% sure about the vacuum and optimize, but let me get back to you on that one. We'll, any questions we've got that require any follow-up, we can send out after the session, Gemma. So yeah, I'll take a look at that afterwards, and yeah, I'll get back to you on that one, Mark. Okay, so let's look at performance monitoring and alerting in Fabric SQL database. So, you probably sitting there thinking, we've covered most of the traditional tasks at DBA. We cover availability, security, recovery, backup, restore, that type of thing. So that there isn't really much to do from a traditional DBA point of view, but this is the area where, in my opinion, we can really make a difference. So, bad queries will run bad on any platform. So, if you're migrating something into Fabric SQL database, then a bad query that uses lots of CPU I/O is going to cost you a lot more in capacity units when it's in Fabric. So, good solid query tuning skills are going to make a big impact on not only the performance but also the cost of running these databases. So so it's pretty much been the situation with PaaS solutions as well. So bad queries cost you more. The more CPU and I/O you need, the more it's going to cost you in a PaaS environment. So we can really we can really make a difference when it comes to the performance monitoring side of things in Fabric SQL database. So Microsoft make it easy for you to create databases, but as we know from experience, making something easy to build and create doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be performant. So we've all seen badly written queries and tables that are not indexed properly and this type of thing. It's easy to do this. It's easy to create SQL databases, but it's also easy to create bad code as well that runs against them. So so we've got all those years of experience designing schemas, choosing the most effective indexes, choosing the most efficient data types, and building and maintaining statistics on the data. So these are all really relevant when it comes to SQL database and Fabric as well. So we have a performance dashboard view in Fabric, which shows us some metrics around about CPU, I/O, some bottlenecks, when it comes to queries, and Microsoft's recently added memory counters to this as well. So we'll take a look at the performance dashboard in a moment. And then we also have alerts that are automatically generated here. So these are raised when there's a current problem like high CPU usage over, I think the threshold is 80% of the CPU consumption. So when you hit that threshold for a period of time, then you do get those alerts raised. So you can see those in the dashboard. And we also get things like query stats. So this is all pulled directly from Query Store. So if you remember, I looked at the Fabric database in Management Studio. We can also get access to Query Store for that Fabric SQL database as well through Management Studio. So if you want to do a bit more digging in Query Store, then you can use your performance tuning knowledge to do that. So let's have a demo of this and look at the performance dashboard. So you can see the top bar there, we've got an alert. So it shows you that we've got a database performance alert that needs a retention. So open up the performance summary there, and you'll see that little bell icon beside it. Click on that and you'll get the details of the alert that's currently happening. So we've got high CPU consumption and we've got some blocking going on as well. So we can dig in further to this by clicking on either any one of those view more, or we can click on the view performance dashboard option there, and we can see our CPU consumption going through the roof there. We can zoom in on that particular time frame to get a better view, and those red dots are the alerts that have been raised. So we can see it's been critical for a few minutes now. So We can see the queries that we're running there, and we can order those by total CPU time, and then that shows you our most expensive queries. And if we click on the query ID, then this is pulling the data from Query Store now. We can see the query that was running. We can see some execution stats for that query as well. And we can also look at the execution history, and we can compare performance over time for that query. You might want to look at the average CPU rather than the total as well there, and you can sort it by that. And you can also look at the performance over the past 7 days to see if this is an ongoing issue or if something's suddenly fallen off a cliff. We're able to see that there as well. So if we go back to the CPU view and the dashboard, we zoom into a particular time period where we're concerned about the high CPU usage, then we can drill down and get more details of the queries that we're running there. We can see long running queries, so what took the most duration, and we can see the most executed queries, and also queries that are using, they're issuing a lot of read commands as well, so which issuing the most IOPS. So let's filter in, drill down to that time frame there, and yeah, we can see we've got quite a few alerts there, and that's between about 5:40 and 7 p.m. Or we can also drill down into the time interval using the drop down there. So what was going on at that time? We can see that there was a few high CPU alerts, and that also filters the queries that we're running, to that specific time range as well. So if we grab those query IDs from the performance dashboard, we can then switch to Management Studio, and we can then look at those query IDs in Query Store. We can also see what else is going on at that time as well. So we can see if there's abnormally high user connections or requests per second, and we can see if there's any blocking going on. Yep, so if we flip over to Management Studio, we can open up Query Store and look at the top resource consuming queries, and the query IDs there match with the performance dashboard query IDs because it's coming from the same source. It's coming from Query Store, and Query Store gives us the ability to look at the execution plans and also look at potential missing indexes as well. Now, I'm pretty sure Microsoft are planning and building in execution plans to the performance dashboard as well, but the idea is to keep it quite high level and simple, but with your DBA skills, you can then dive into Query Store. So we can see those queries there. We can see the execution plans. There's quite a few missing indexes. We're going to create some of these indexes, and yep, we can see that was created at 1928. So let's keep that time in mind and see if those indexes actually have an impact on the the performance of the queries running against that database. So if we go back into the performance dashboard, we can filter out the time range again. We can see the non-clustered indexes that we created, so they appear on the high consumption query list, and we can we can dig into those individual queries there, look at the execution history, and we can see that for some of these queries we can see the average CPU time decreasing. If we look at the past 7 days, then we can see that that CPU is almost half their average CPU consumption for that query. So we can see the impact of building those indexes there. If you look at one of the other queries as well, then we can see kind of similar patterns for those as well. Yeah, if we look at the average CPU there as well, we can see that's dropped quite significantly after we built that index, which was just before 8 p.m. So yeah, we can see that dropping as well. Yep, kind of one or two other queries there, which is the same impact. So yeah, we can see the the impact of building those indexes. So that one is significantly dropped. It's went from 742 average milliseconds on average to less than 1. So yeah, this gives us all that kind of insight from the dashboard in Fabric, but in conjunction with Query Store and Management Studio, we can see the impact of that as well. So if we look at these queries in Query Store, we see the new execution plans being generated for those queries, which are based on building those indexes. So we can see the two plan IDs there. We can see 740, the pink one, and that's a far more efficient plan because we built the index, the non-clustered index that query needs, and we can see that in the execution plan as well, that clustered index, non-clustered index has been created. Yeah, so yep, and we can see that index that we created there, INDX_posts closed date, is now used by those queries. So I could probably fast forward this a little bit. It's just more of the same. But if we go into this view here, we can see the indexes that were created. So we can see those user created ones, INDX_, but there's also an NCI_ MSFT index created as well. You might be wondering what that is. We didn't create it ourselves. We created those non-clustered indexes. So if we look at the index usage stats, we can see that those indexes are now in use, and yeah, that NCI_MSFT1 is in use as well. Now, that is an auto-created index in Fabric SQL database, so that's the naming convention for that. So we can go into the performance dashboard and we can actually see the automatic index being created there, and we can see it's actually being used as well with the index usage stats. So that's an example of Fabric deciding to create that index based on the queries that are executing against that database. And yeah, so in conjunction with your own indexes and the automatic index creation, then we can cover lots of different performance issues there. So yeah, so that was quite an in-depth look at the performance dashboard there, but I feel that's the area where we can really use our skills, and hopefully Microsoft continue to improve on the metrics available there. So what are some of the alternatives to Fabric SQL database? So we can use mirroring. So this is a technology that allows you to mirror data from certain sources. So you don't need any pipelines. It's zero ETL, zero code, and the storage for mirroring is actually free for your replicas. So that's based on the size of your Fabric capacity. So if you have say an F64 capacity, then you would get 64 terabytes of free storage for mirrored data. So it actually is quite a good saving, based on having that free storage available. So you can replicate existing SQL databases or other sources that are supported into Fabric, and those tables those replicated tables are stored as Delta tables in OneLake, and you get that near-time data replication in Delta format, and you can also access that data via SQL Analytics endpoint and join it to other other workloads in Fabric. So this is really what Fabric SQL Database is doing under the covers for you automatically. But you can also enable mirroring for SQL Server sources that are either Azure SQL Database, SQL Managed Instance, or SQL Server on-prem or on virtual machines. So Fabric takes care of all this for you, under the covers. So it replicates that data into OneLake, and it's then available to all the other personas in Fabric. So this is
a question related to that in the chat, Rob.
Yeah, sure.
So someone's asked whether there are any limitations with the number of tables that can be mirrored in, database mirroring, whether there's any limitations with the number of tables. So can large databases be replicated in Fabric? Yeah,
so in preview it was limited to 500. Now that should be 1,000 tables now that it's in GA, and Microsoft are planning on increasing that. If you've got more tables than the allowed limit for mirroring, then what you do is you create one mirrored database with your first 500 tables, then a second mirrored database with your next 500 tables. So that was a way around it. It's a bit of a pain to set it up, but Microsoft are increasing those scalability limits now that it's gone, mirroring, is gone GA. So there is, so there is a limit, but that limit is continuing to increase. Yep. DB2 databases, can I replicate DB2? That is, I'm not sure where that is in the roadmap. I know it is on the roadmap. It's not available yet, but let me check on that one, Paul, and see where it is for DB2 databases. So that this slide I put up here is the latest slide from Ignite this week, where it shows you the shortcut and mirroring sources that are generally available on the left-hand side and the ones that are in public preview on the right-hand side. So I don't see DB2 on that list, but there is a feature called open mirroring as well, which essentially you can pretty much mirror any source you like, but it just means you do need to do a bit of the coding yourself. That the mirroring framework is given to you, but you have to kind of determine the change data capture functionality of the source, and you can pretty much mirror any source. But DB2 is something that we probably should have a supported source for. So let me check on that one. There's another question there. Need to use SQL DB in cloud. If you can use Fabric SQL database, yeah, exactly. So that was a question from a point from Mark there. Yeah, I've got a slide here comparing Azure SQL DB and Fabric SQL DB, but essentially they are the same underlying engine. So the code bases should, your code should run on Fabric SQL database, and it should run on Azure SQL database. It should be portable. So depending on, whether you use mirroring or Fabric SQL database, it really depends on your specific situation. So I've got a demo for mirroring, but how are we for time? I think we're okay for time.
10 minutes left.
Yep, I'll just give you a quick demo of how you set up mirroring. So you create a mirrored database in Fabric, and that then creates this as a Fabric item. You get the SQL Analytics endpoint there, and you click on the mirrored database, and you can see things like the replication. You can see the amount of rows that have been replicated, and you can see the status of that, if it's running or not. And you can grab the endpoint, the SQL endpoint there, so that you can actually query those Delta tables that are mirrored directly. And again, you can open it up in SQL Server Management Studio and you can query that read-only that way as well. Yep, and yeah, so you can those tables appear, in the UI as well, and you can write queries against that using the Fabric UI. Now, everything against the analytics endpoint is read-only, so if you get any queries that modify data, then you would need to use Spark or some other method to modify the to read that data and modify it. Or if you're using Fabric SQL database, you modify the data, then those modifications get replicated to the Delta tables automatically. So yeah, so you can choose your tables to mirror, and an option here, you can, if you add tables to your source in future, then they can automatically be picked up by Fabric mirroring. So yeah, that's how you'd set up a mirrored database as opposed to a Fabric database. So this is a little decision guide here. So Azure SQL Database gives you things like hyperscale, which scales up to 128 terabytes of storage, and there's security features that are available there that are in preview in Fabric SQL Database, and it gives you the ability to monitor your databases using Database Watcher, which is another tool, which is a monitoring tool for Azure SQL Database and SQL Managed Instance that you can use, and also ARC-enabled SQL servers are now supported for Database Watcher. So that's quite a nice tool. The pros of using SQL Database and Fabric is basically you've seen how easy it is to set up. You've got an automatic replication of data for your analytics queries, and it has the serverless and auto-scaling architecture, which just makes it scale up and scale down as required. So this is a quick slide just showing you the roadmap. I grabbed this from the Ignite session last night. So we're a Fabric featured partner for databases, and we do get the ability to feedback any comments or concerns or features that we would like. So some of these things were on my list. I'm not taking any credit for them, but it's good to see that they're going to be coming along soon. So we'll be able to shortcut directly from databases into OneLake. So we can use data virtualization, which is like creating external tables, which points to Parquet CSV files on OneLake, but we can't actually directly shortcut to Delta tables yet. So that would enable us to do things like cross-database querying. If we can shortcut to a Delta table in another Fabric SQL database, so that's a nice feature. And they're adding Copilot and query editor improvements. As you type, then Copilot will suggest code for you. And there's also a migration experience that isn't, as far as I'm aware, isn't in preview yet. So there'll be a private preview of that coming along. So one of the things that's quite lacking just now is migration tools. So there's a couple of ways to migrate. You can create a DAC pack file or a backpack, which includes the data, and then you can import that into Fabric SQL database, or you can use pipelines to copy the data directly from your source into Fabric database. But having a migration experience where we can lift and shift databases, do the schema and the data automatically for us is something that's coming along as well in the future. So yeah, a few other things here around about AI, but yeah, those are some of the things that we've been asking for a while. So it's good to know that these are coming. So that Fabric SQL roadmap link there, grab that link as well, because that shows you what's coming in future and what's in public or private preview and how you can sign up to these things. Okay, so what did we learn? So we've learned that there's not many configuration options for us to tune, but we can bring our experience in security, database design, and performance tuning, and we can bring that into Fabric SQL database, and we can, directly impact the cost of the Fabric SQL databases. So, if we identify and tune queries, then we're using less CPU and memory, so we're using less capacity units in Fabric, so it costs less, or it uses less of our capacity, so we don't need to scale up our capacity. And essentially, it's just SQL Server running in Fabric. So it's basically the database engine that you know and love. Well, sometimes love, but yeah, so it's basically SQL Server running in Fabric. So it's actually been, I've been working with this since private preview, and it just works. It really does. So there's very little code changes you need to make if you're migrating. It's just the migration tools part of it that's a bit lacking just now, but it's possible to migrate those databases using other methods. So my final thought is basically head over to Microsoft Learn and find out more about it. Find out more about Fabric. I've primarily been a SQL Server guy in the past, but it's been great working in Fabric and working in Spark and these different environments where we can also bring our T-SQL knowledge, and we can apply it to lake houses and Fabric data warehouses as well. So yeah, so head over there. I've got some other resources in the slide deck, so you'll get the slide deck afterwards, and these are things that I've found really useful, and yeah, hopefully you find them useful as well. So that's me for today. So hopefully you found it useful. It's been great having so many people join, and thank you for giving up an hour of your time, to learn about Fabric SQL databases. So I can hand over for some more questions for the remaining time we've got. But yeah, thanks again for joining.
Thanks, Rob. We have got one more question in the Q&A from John. So he's asked, can we mirror from a SQL database on an Azure VM? They're currently on 2022, but could move to 2025, but they've seen conflicting information about it. Yeah.
So Azure VM is now GA mirroring. So if we go back to the slide, I showed the mirroring sources. So SQL Server's there. So it's 2016 onwards is supported as a source. So that could be in a Azure VM, it could be on-prem. It just, if it's on-prem, you just need to be aware that you'll need a data gateway in Fabric to be configured. So you need an on-prem data gateway so that Fabric can actually, so you can actually communicate with Fabric securely. But that's, pretty similar to what you would have done, things like, Azure Data Factory or, Power BI. So you will need a gateway, but yeah, that is fully supported, fully GA, and yeah, ready to go.
Perfect. I think we've managed to get through everyone's questions. We are running out of time slightly now. So I'll wrap it up there just by saying thank you to Rob for presenting and thank you to everyone for taking the time to join. We will be sharing the slides and the recording later this afternoon after I've had a chance just to process everything. And if you do have any questions that we haven't managed to get through, feel free to reply to that email. The inbox is monitored, and Rob and I will be around for the next few days to answer any questions that might pop up. We hope that you will be able to join us for the next session. We're going to be skipping December and having a break for Christmas, but we'll be back in January with a session on AI Foundry and Copilot and how you can use those in Fabric. So keep an eye out for the registration link for that. And thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Rob, again, and we'll see everyone in January.
Thanks, Gemma. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.